Hello! Welcome to Outdoor Classroom number 4 for week 5 of Herbal 1100 Introduction to Herbal Medicine. And this week, our 2 plants of the week are blue vervain and agrimony. And I am standing here in blue vervain abundance. And it is actually fall, and they're still blooming. And they just keep pushing up the stalk like these. It's like little candelabras, and they're still blooming at this time. So if you still need blue vervain, as I know you do, go out and you can pick off the tops as such, and put them into a tincture or dry them. Now I prefer tincturing this because it's so bitter, and I prefer tinctures in general for using herbs, because a lot of herbs, for dealing with a chronic situation, we're going to be taking herbs 3 times a day. And in life, although we're if you're home all day, it might be different, but in life it's easier sometimes just to take a tincture under the tongue or add it to some water and drink it 3 times a day instead of making tea 3 times a day, or making a big thing of tea and drinking it all day. But everyone has their preference. This is rather bitter. It's not as bitter as motherwort, so that's nice. And this week in our outdoor classroom, actually in class, we are going to start talking about ethnobotany. And we're also going to be talking about the problems with, colonization and taking information from tribes within ethnobotany. And the other issue with ethnobotany is that we're not going to get the whole story. We are going to get an interpretation from someone outside of the culture, maybe giving us a few brief things that someone uses a plant for that they are willing to divulge. So it's not everything, but we do have, and the best way to find out how to use something is try it yourself. But and tribal information is kept within the tribe, so the only real way of understanding how it's seen and used is to be a part of that exchange with an herbalist within the tribe. And information about plants is not stagnant. And so if we take ethnobotany from, let's say, the 1800s or the 1700s, from tribes here, that is that herbalist in that tribe, or that healer, that medicine person, and every single healer, herbalist, medicine person has different favorites and different uses for things. So ethnobotany and reading it can be rather complicated to get the information that we want from plants. But if we know a thing or two about the herb, some of it can make a lot of sense. So for blue vervain, or Verbena hastata, it's also called swamp verbena because it generally tends to grow by cattails on the edges of swamps or lakes. And this one happens to grow in my garden, and I didn't plant it, so aren't I lucky? I'm sure I was harvesting something and some seeds escaped, because seeds like to. And so for the Cherokee, in the Native American Ethnobotanical Database, blue vervain, Verbena hastata, is listed for the Cherokee tribe as an abortifacient, for birth after pains, for old bowel complaints and dysentery, as a general tonic for breast complaints, for colds, coughs, and as a diaphoretic, and for nosebleeds, they use the dried flowers. And it does say that they use the seeds, which are within these here, the leaves and the root. I commonly just harvest this part, the flowers. Now it said the Dakota used it for stomach ache, the Delaware used it for chills, the Iroquois used it for earache, stomach cramps, summer complaints, to cool the head off and make obnoxious persons leave. And Ojibwe used it for urinary troubles. So if we take that information, it doesn't, it tells us that it's probably good for the female system. It tells us that it's used for bowel complaints, but it doesn't tell us a lot about what the taste of this herb is going to be, or what in general the action is. And as an herbalist, we really want to know, who is this herb for? Who is it used for? Like, who would benefit from it? Like, what really quick applications can we have? And that's where we get more into like specific indications, using something specifically to change things. And a lot of herbalists nowadays use Verbena hastata, blue vervain, as a nervine herb, or an herb that restores the nervous system to a balanced state. And what's fascinating to me is that when you go into the store and there's like tons of, like Calm Aid and, calm formulas out there, and formulas are the big thing that everyone wants to buy now, and formulas are great, but there's not blue vervain in any formulas, and rarely do you find it in stores. And this is one of my absolute favorite nervines, and so many people could use it because it helps people who really need to control things and they're not nice about it. And they don't want to be told what to do. They have everything planned out. And they do not handle things that are not in their control happening. So they don't handle that well. But that's not all it is. They also want to control other people. They want to control circumstances, and everything has to kind of be in bites, where they're not getting too overloaded with like new information, because that wears them out, because they're trying to control and make sure things come to the outcome that they want to. And that's a difficult place to be. And what it's about for blue vervain is it's helping people go with the flow of things rather than trying to control it. So in a way, it's like it just helps people to be like, okay, now I can, instead of controlling and tightening up and not being able to move through this and just kind of being stuck in this place where like it has to be this one way, it helps people to flow. And what's fascinating about blue vervain, it was used for epilepsy. And if you think of epilepsy as a spasm in the whole body, like nervous system, muscles, and everything, and things clench up and get tight. I mean, verbena was used for epilepsy, and it kind of went and got the flow of things and calmed it down. So it's an antispasmodic. And spasm is, basically a muscle cramp, where the muscle is not moving very well. It's very painful, and it helps the muscles flow. And so blue vervain has that, and it does that for the nervous system as well. And a lot of people that need this end up having really tight shoulders. They can have a really tight neck. They can have pain where their neck is kind of stuck for a while because they slept the wrong way. And it's fascinating, like how emotionally we can get stuck into a pattern, and then like our body can get stuck. We're walking around with our like neck stuck because things are so intense. And these people that use it get angry, and they don't talk nicely to people. And so when it says that Iroquois used it to make obnoxious people leave, actually, if you just gave this to the obnoxious person, then they would actually be less obnoxious. So that's kind of fascinating that you could burn it in the house to make them leave, but you could treat it. And the reason why folks in this state are obnoxious is they're often the people that are talking so loud that you can't ignore them, and they are not listeners. And I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where like someone is talking to you, and they're talking really, really loud, and they just keep going, and you're waiting, and like you're kind of like you know, you had something you were going to do, or you were at a party and someone like cornered you and just like is talking at you and could care less about what you have to say, and you're just like waiting and you're like and they just like are just nailing you with information and they have no interest in having an actual conversation. That's a blue vervain. That's a blue vervain. So but these are negative pictures, and this what it's really about is going with the flow of energy, and but also so that's a specific for it. And I know everyone was going to want to try this at a party to make an obnoxious person. I haven't tried that one. You know, when I think about it, in many situations it would be nice to have blue vervain in my pocket. But this is also really nice. This is my favorite, and they have the Cherokee used it as a diaphoretic, and this is a fantastic diaphoretic, and it could be used because this is a diaphoretic that kind of relaxes the musculature and the circulation and puts the blood flow to the surface, and it cools down by getting the blood by the pores opened up so that the heat can go out. And this is my all-time favorite hot flash herb. I have not found anything better, and I have worked with hot flashes so many times, and my absolute favorite hot flash herb in formula with lemon balm and motherwort, sometimes peony, and just my all-time favorite. And I don't know why this is not on the shelves. I think I maybe said that in a prior video, but I don't know why blue vervain is not the one on the shelves for hot flashes. It works a lot better than it's the one that's marketed, which is black cohosh. So this is black cohosh over here, and black cohosh can work for some people's hot flashes, but in general blue vervain is much better. Blue vervain is our plant of the week, so try to spot this. If you see cattails or boneset, or you're along like Lake of the Isles, or you're in a natural area that's wet, try to find these. And you may not see these little cute blue flowers, but you might be able to see these long seed heads growing. And it does have a square stem, and it is in the Lamiaceae family, but it is not very aromatic. It has more of that bitter quality in it than the aromatic. If you don't know me by now, I know you know this one. I know you can't believe that I'm going to talk about this one again. Do I have more? Yes, there's more to agrimony. I think we've had agrimony, but it's the plant of the week this week, so I have to do it one more time. And it knew it was going to be the plant of the week, so there's 2 flowers left. There's 2 flowers left, and they're the flowers of the rose family. So there's 5 petals in there, and you could think of it as a mini wild rose, right? So, oh, look at, maybe there's more flowers coming. It's amazing. It's mid-September, and it's fantastic. So here we are again with agrimony, and it has these little leaves and these big leaves, which is really a great identifier. Not many plants have that, and if you're looking for it, so this is tall, hairy agrimony, Agrimonia grippocephala. And right now in September we have the burrs, which we've looked at. And in the rose family, a lot of the fruits, you know, are little, like the haws of hawthorn, or the raspberries, or the fruits of raspberry, or we have the rose hips. And so I always like to think of these not as burrs, even though they do stick to you, but I like to think of them as agrimony hips, but they don't call them that, so that's too bad. They're called burrs. We will call them burrs. That's officially what they are, because they do stick to you. And we're talking about the ethnobotany this week. We just talked about the plant family. We know that the rose family is astringent and cooling, so it's drying and creates barriers and boundaries so that things don't infect. And we're going to look at what the Native American Ethnobotanical Database, naeb.brit.org. You can type in the name of your plant. It's best to type in the Latin sometimes, but we'll find out what they have to say about some of the ethnobotany that was done in the United States for tall, hairy agrimony. So for the Cherokee tribe, they used an infusion of the burrs to check the bowels. So this was from diarrhea. And so you could just take off the burrs and dry them and keep them and have them stored up. And of course, this is going to last longer in storage through the winter, dried, than maybe the dried leaves will. So the burrs is smart. And there's also lots of condensed tannins, which is what is the part of the plant that has that astringent quality to it, in the fruits and seeds of plants. So that's smart to have more of that condensed tannins to it. They also used it to, agrimony to build up the blood and to satisfy a child's hunger. And the burrs were taken for fevers. The root was also used to check the bowels. And the burrs were used to check discharge. So they don't say from where. But I do know that you can use agrimony to stop a runny nose. Raspberry happens to be the favorite of my family, raspberry leaf, which is another rose family plant. But you can definitely use agrimony to stop a runny nose as well. So as we can see, the Cherokee are using it as an astringent there. And the Iroquois also used it for children with diarrhea and what they called summer complaint, which was in the summer when the water source, maybe things start growing, some bacteria start growing in the water, and it caused just upset stomachs and tummy troubles. It was also, the burrs were used for stopping nosebleeds, and that's a lot like it was used on the battlefields in Greco-Roman times as a battle wound herb. So they were using it to stop nosebleeds as well. And the Ojibwe tribe here, Anishinaabe, used it for urinary troubles. And that's like the first one we see where it deals with urinary troubles. And it is very reliable at taking the pain away from the kidneys and kidney stones. So that's a really specifically different use than other plants in the rose family. So every plant has this familiar thing possibly with its family, like the roses are astringent and cooling, but then they have their specific indications. So with blue vervain, we talked about its specific nervine indication. There's lots of nervines, like when do you use blue vervain? Like when you're like, yeah, I'm gonna choose blue vervain for that person or me when I'm feeling that way. And so when do we use agrimony for urinary problems? There's tons of herbs that are used for urinary problems. You know, marshmallow kind of coats and soothes. Dandelion we've talked about as a diuretic. But agrimony is used for extreme pain in the kidneys, and eventually the eclectics talk about a right-sided kidney pain. So that's interesting, but it does take kidney pain down. That is not all I use agrimony for. I use agrimony for Tourette syndrome, and it can help some, not all, but many people with the shakes. I mix it in formulas with other bitter herbs. And I use agrimony for a lot of different things. We talked about boundaries the last time we talked about it, but we will leave it at the ethnobotany, and you can discover more about agrimony, because I won't tell it all. to make them.